My name is Dina Sherif. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ahead of the Curve, which is a startup that really supports startups. We do a lot of work to support entrepreneurship with impact through early stage investments and also a lot of very out-of-the-box training programs for social entrepreneurs. I'm also the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship at the American University in Cairo and an associate professor of practice at the AUC School of Business. I think the question in particular was, how do I know that customers really need my product? And at what stage of product development should I ask myself such a question? I think the question that you really need to answer is whether or not your product really meets the needs of your customers to begin with. So I would say that every entrepreneur should be after creating a product that sells itself. And if the product is really needed, then you won't be questioning whether or not customers will buy your product or whether they won't buy your product. So I would say that there are three key things that you need to look at and when you're thinking about your product and whether it really meets the needs of your customers is, one, you need to link your product to product benefits, to the outcomes that your customers actually really need. So, and then number two, you need to design your product to match the experience that your customers want, and that requires very creative design. So for example, I do a lot of teaching of design thinking in my classes and in all of our training programs because you really need to be thinking about the needs of your customers when you design your product. And if you design your product really well, it will create the experience that your consumers want. And number three, you need to show how your product actually overcomes the potential objections that the customers will actually have. So you need to be thinking about what are some of the key pain areas that customers or your consumers will have, and you need to show how your product will actually overcome those. No, and I'm going to say in the next part of that question is that what stage of product development should you be asking yourself this question? You should be asking yourself the questions related to product need from the very first stage of development of a business idea. So if you think of if you think in terms of how to get your idea into a place where you can actually go to market, you need to start by going out and actually sensing and identifying customer needs and then designing a product based on those needs. And that's when you really need to be asking the question of whether or not the product is actually relevant to the needs of the consumers based on the needs of the consumers and not based on the assumptions that you have in your own head, because entrepreneurs almost always fall into the trap of their own assumptions about what consumers need, and it's often not the case. The next question is how to gain business trust when we're a group of students and our customer target are big companies. So this is my answer to that question, is that you can always get trust if your product is relevant. And I think age is just a number as long as what you're trying to offer is creating value. So big companies will take students seriously if they have a very solid value proposition and something that big business can really benefit from. If you're able to do that, then I think that it will become very easy to develop a relationship of trust. And as long as you're passionate about your idea and you're very clear about how you want to take it forward, most big businesses will take you seriously. I think the question number three is really about how do I go to market with a product that is ready, specifically if it's technology software. So, and at what stage do you start thinking of revenue? So I would answer this question by saying that at every business idea stage, you really need to be developing a complete and comprehensive business model. And I would highly recommend that you fill in a business model canvas sheet. And through that will allow you to think through all of the core components of your business, including revenue and how you will generate revenue, which should really come at the idea stage. So you should not wait very long before you start thinking about the generation of revenue. But to create a very strong go-to-market strategy, I would say you need to think about 5 key components. Number one, so what markets do you really want to pursue? Is it only your local market, or do you really see yourself crossing from Egypt to another market, because that will require a very different kind of strategy. Number two, you need to identify who your target consumers are. Who are you going to be selling to? So who are your target clients or customers? Number three, where will you actually promote your products? So what channels will you use to promote your products? And number four, how are you going to price it? And from that, you can start thinking about revenue. And number five, I would say no business is complete until you identify the why behind the reason why you created this actual product to begin with. So if you really want to create a stellar business and then you really want people to buy your products, you really need to explain to them why this product is relevant. People really want to know the purpose. Consumers today are very savvy, they are very much self-aware, and they know very much why they're buying particular products. So it's really up to the entrepreneur to explain to the consumer the why. And without the why, it becomes very difficult to sell. The next question talks a little bit about how you can fund your project if you have limited resources when you're starting the company. And how can you create a simple business plan? I'm going to go back and answer that the same way. I think most companies that focus very much on creating very detailed business plans fail. I would recommend that you create a complete business model along the lines of what I just said. It's very important that you think about your value proposition. It's very important that you think about the channels and the key target groups and the channels through which you're going to sell your product. And if you really want to create a crowdfinancing campaign that will be really successful, then you really need to answer the question of why. Why this business? Why is it important? Why would I want to buy your product? What is the purpose? So when you think about Apple products, or this iPhone here, why do we keep on buying? I'm pretty much Apple everything. I have a MacBook, I have an iPhone, I have an iPad, because Apple sold the idea of creating a very simple and beautiful design that everybody wants to have, regardless of whether or not it's more expensive than buying an Android. We still gravitate towards iPhone because they sold us the idea of why. Everybody wants a great design. Which is very different than here, buy a phone, it works really well. So you really need to sell the why and the purpose behind your product and why it's so unique. And from that, you can usually build a very successful crowdfinancing campaign. For crowdfunding to work, there needs to be a lot of purpose in it. There needs to be a lot of passion. People need to feel connected to your product for them to give money to support that. And I think crowdfinancing can be an incredibly useful tool for companies in Egypt at the very early stage who are not yet ready for VC funding, or even to really approach an angel investor. Crowdfunding is always a great source, and I think you can look at Zoomel, which was founded by Abdallah Absi. He's created a great platform for early stage businesses to get on his platform and raise money from the crowds. But again, I can't emphasize enough, purpose, 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 really explain the why behind the product. The next question is, how do I execute a prototype for my idea to test it? How much money should I risk while starting my first business? So, anybody who knows the basics of design thinking knows that prototyping is an incredibly, incredibly important part of that process. So, I would say that every entrepreneur, no matter what kind of business they're building, even if it's a business that's service-oriented as opposed to creating a product, has to prototype, and prototypes can come in many different shapes and forms. It doesn't have to come in the actual creation of the full-fledged product. It can come in the form of a storyboard. It can come in the form of creating what it will look like online, many different forms. But I always say you have to create a basic prototype, very simple. Don't invest too much money in it, because you do have to test it before you launch and go to market. If you don't have a prototype and if you haven't tested that prototype with your users, I would never ever encourage a business to go to market without having done that. But I also wouldn't encourage you to invest a lot of money in building a prototype at a very, very early stage in your idea formulation, because most people build prototypes, they test it, they rebuild again, they go back, they test it, and they rebuild again. And that's just a very important part of the process of building a very successful and scalable business. So I would say build a very, very basic, very simple prototype, test that. If you find a lot of positive feedback, go back, rebuild the prototype again. If you get more positive feedback, then I would say invest in a really proper and very strong prototype, and then get ready to go to market. So the next question is really one of my favorites, which is how can I choose my partner, and how can we divide the job among us? So I have two business partners. One of them is silent, one of them is very active, and I would say that to anybody who asks me how to choose your partner, I would say two things. Whether or not their passion is aligned with yours, and whether or not they have a level of integrity and honesty that will allow you to work together. Starting a business with somebody is kind of like it's like a marriage. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and there needs to be a very, very high level of honesty and transparency, but there needs to be comparable levels of passion. And if I'm more passionate than my business partner is, this will create problems over time, because starting a business requires a lot of commitment, a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifice. And if all partners involved are not equally passionate, this takes away from the level of commitment that is actually being brought to the table. And again, integrity, because it is like a marriage. So if you're not 100% honest, if you're not 100% transparent, if you don't have similar ethics, and if you aren't the kind of person who has a very strong sense of moral conduct, then I wouldn't go into a business with that person. So I would say passion and level of integrity are the two top things that I would say look for in a good partner. But just to follow up, if you feel that you have enough passion to carry you through, and what you're really looking for is a certain level of expertise, then look for excellence in that expertise plus integrity. Never ever compromise integrity. Where can I find a team who believes in creativity, development, thinking outside the box, and want to work hard? So this is a great question, and I would say as a leader, you need to actually build that in your team. So I think you may not actually go out and find people who are automatically creative, who think outside the box, and who want to work hard. Although I think, hardworking people you can easily identify, but you need to create a culture in your business that cultivates creativity and thinking outside the box. And that's really up to you as an entrepreneur, and as a leader, because they can come to you creative, they can come to you being willing to think outside the box, they can come to you hardworking, but if you don't create a culture to constantly keep that going and to bring that out, that could easily all disappear. So I would say this, to find a strong team, you need to look for exceptional people to help you start your business. But to get all these characteristics, you need to help create that within the culture of your startup. So the question is, if I have a new entrepreneurial idea that's still at the idea phase, how can I protect the copyrights of the idea, specifically that it's hard to execute on the spot? So I would say a couple of things to that. I think it's never too early to talk to a good lawyer about protecting your ideas. And it's not just about protecting your ideas, it's about protecting your ideas, protecting your brand, protecting your logo, and all of these things require protection. So I would say it's never too early to talk to a lawyer about how to protect the IP of your idea and copyrights in general. And I think there are a lot of lawyers in Egypt who provide pro bono support to startups. I think Egypt Innovate, on their platform, they're going to be providing a lot of information on how to do this, and you can always refer to that platform as well. And I would say early, talk to a lawyer. So when should we pause our startup and kill it? This is a great question, and most people never think about when the right time to actually kill a startup is. And I would say kill a startup under a couple of circumstances. One, that the founder or co-founders have completely lost their passion for the idea and for the startup, which means that they've lost their ability to commit in a serious way. And I would say that if the idea has proven to really not be viable, as in there really is no demand for what you're providing, and you're losing money constantly instead of without any hope of actually making money, then I would say kill it. I would say it's always a good idea to fail fast and learn fast and get up and build a new idea than to continue with an idea that's not working. Next question is, if I have a very strong, successful, and profitable marketing system for a mobile operator company, however I can't reach them at all, how can I reach them and how can I present my system to them? Well, this is the power of networks. So I think I would say every person has their own network, and all the people that you know have their networks. And if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to really learn how to leverage all of the networks that you can access. And there are networks that you have, there are networks that people that you know have, there are networks that you can acquire through different communities of entrepreneurs, like the entrepreneurs that are connected to Rise Up, or entrepreneurs who go to the Center for Entrepreneurship, or a platform like Egypt Innovate. But definitely you have to capitalize on existing networks or find ways to tap into networks and use those networks to get you a meeting within the mobile operator that you want to talk to. But definitely you have to work hard at that. It's not something that can come easy. That's just the nature of startups. You really have to work through the different networks that exist and learn how to leverage those to help your business grow. I think the only thing that I would also recommend is that every mobile operator has a presence on social media, and every mobile operator has a way for you to contact them and get feedback. And if you're determined enough, you can find a way to get to them. I think also there are mobile operators like Itsalat that do have entrepreneurship programs now, and those are managed predominantly through the people who manage their corporate social responsibility arms, and you can always find a way to access them. Again, using and leveraging the networks that you as a startup can actually tap into. There's a lot of support systems right now for startups, but it's really up to you to make use of those networks. So the last question is, I want to change the world, but I don't know where to start. And can you give me a piece of advice that can help me out? Well, I think most people who are young want to change the world but don't know how to start. I was one of them. So I would say the best way to start is to really think about what are you excited about? What makes you most passionate? What is it that you want to, what difference do you want to make in the world and that you think you can actually excel at? And I would start from there. And then start thinking about all the little steps that can help get you there. So I think a lot of my students, I always say, give yourself time to try different kinds of jobs, to do different kinds of internships, to be exposed to different kinds of work so that you can actually come to your own conclusion about what you're most excited about. But if you really want to change the world and you feel that you have the potential to really be an impact entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur, then I would say, look and identify very clearly the change that you want to see and work backwards. So what is the problem that you want to tackle, and what solution do you think that you can bring to the table and commercialize and scale to really make the difference that you want to see in the world? I think wanting to make a difference is a great thing, and I hope more and more young people want to follow that path of making a difference, and asking for advice is one of the greatest things that you could do at this point in your life, and I wish you the best of luck. And for those of you who would like to reach me or ask me any other questions, feel free to tweet me. My Twitter handle is @Dina Sherif, or you can contact me on my email, dsherif@ahead-ofthecurve.com.